Welcome back to the 10th King Films weekend basketball predictions and betting locks for the NCAA. This will be the final time that we go at it this season, and let's take a recap of last week. We were successful in the locks going 4-2 and successful in the games going 10-6. That brings our final totals for the recap to 30-21 on locks, so we're hitting at 58%. I'd consider myself a sharp at that point, and 85-49, which is just above 60% in the games category. Moving on to my 8 locks, let's start with USC and UCLA. UCLA has wins over Colorado and Arizona twice. They've got Tiger Campbell, Johnny Juzang, Jaime Jaquez, and Cody Riley. They're coming off a loss to Colorado and Oregon in their last 2 games, whereas USC is coming off 2 losses to Utah and Colorado, but then they just beat Stanford by 40. So I'm going to have USC take this one and cover the pick'em spread. USC has wins over BYU, Arizona, Oregon, and UCLA the first time, and they've got Evan and Isaiah Mobley, Tajidi, and Drew Peterson. Next up, we've got a huge rivalry match with Duke. They've got Hurt and Stewart. They've won 4 straight. They have wins over Syracuse and UVA, and they have 2 straight losses. So both of the teams in this matchup really need this game, as UNC has wins over Louisville, Duke, the first time, FSU, and Syracuse. They've got Bacot, Brooks, and Love, and they've lost 2 out of 3, their only win being that huge win against FSU to keep them afloat. The loser of this game is really in trouble for March Madness, but especially Duke, because they're in a worse spot to start out. But I've got UNC taking this one at home. Next up, we've got a huge game in the Big 12, Oklahoma State and West Virginia. West Virginia has wins over Texas Tech twice, Oklahoma State, Texas, VCU, and Kansas. Oklahoma State has wins over Kansas, Oklahoma twice, Texas Tech twice, and Arkansas. And they have Cunningham and Likely, but Cunningham is likely out for this game, if you guys catch my drift. And then I'm going to have West Virginia winning this game at -6.5 because they've been rolling recently, took Baylor to overtime, then they just beat TCU by a lot. So give me West Virginia to cover the 6.5 point spread. Next up, we've got Indiana and Purdue, and this is a huge game for both of these teams in terms of seeding. Indiana's just trying to fight their way into the tournament. They've got marquee wins over Iowa twice and Maryland. Jackson Davis is a great player for this team, but they've lost 5 out of 6 straight, and they're desperate. They need to probably win this one, and then 3 or 2 more, depending on how good wins they are in the Big Ten tournament. So they certainly need this one. And then Purdue has wins over Ohio State twice, Maryland, Indiana, and Wisconsin. I'm going to take Purdue to win this game. Indiana's been too up and down for me recently. Next up, we've got LSU and Missouri, and I've got Missouri taking this one. Missouri has wins over Tennessee, Oregon, Illinois, Arkansas, Florida, and Alabama, but they have lost 4 out of 6. They just beat Florida on the road by 2, and that's why I think they'll take this one. They can maybe get in a groove just before the SEC tournament. LSU has wins over Arkansas and Tennessee, and they also have lost 2 out of 3. So we're seeing a pattern with some of these teams I'm predicting here. Both teams are in desperate need of a win in most of these matchups. Next up, we've got Illinois and Ohio State in perhaps the marquee game of Saturday, and I can't pick against Illinois right now. They're probably the hottest team in the nation. They've got wins over Iowa, Michigan, Purdue, and Wisconsin twice. I don't know if Ayo Dosunmu's playing, but based on their performance against Michigan, I'd take them because Kofi Cockburn is a very good player for this team. Ohio State has Liddell and Washington. They've got good wins over Illinois, UCLA, Rutgers twice, Wisconsin, Iowa, and Indiana. But they have lost 3 straight to good teams, Michigan and Iowa, and then a pretty sketchy loss against Michigan State. So I'm going to have Illinois winning this game on the road, but I would not be surprised if this one went either way, and that is why it is not a lock. Next up, we've got Virginia and Louisville, and Virginia has wins over Syracuse, Clemson, Georgia Tech twice, and UNC. Kihei Clark, Huff, and Hauser are all great players for this team. They've lost 3 out of 4, however, so they are going to need a win here to try and set the ship upright going into the ACC tournament. Louisville, though, I think will be the more desperate team here. They've got a win over Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech, and Western Kentucky. They're 2-0 in their last 2, but they may not have Williams for this one as he is out with a foot injury. And I think Virginia is a pretty overrated team, so I'm going to have Louisville pull off the upset here and beat a number 21 ranked Virginia team. Moving on to the Sunday games, there's a lot of good games this week. I'll make my 6 picks. Let's start with Wisconsin and Iowa. Wisconsin has wins over Louisville, Indiana, Loyola, Chicago, Maryland, and Rutgers. Trice, Potter, and Davidson combined for 40 a game. They are overrated, though, as they have lost 5 out of their last 7, and they honestly could have gotten more marquee wins in the Big Ten that they didn't. They kind of just scrape up the wins against the bad teams. But Iowa's not a bad team, and that's why I'm going to have them winning. They've got Garza and Wieskamp. They've got a great offense, wins over Ohio State, Rutgers twice, UNC, Purdue, and Wisconsin the first time. I think they'll be able to get it done against Wisconsin here at home. Next up, we've got Texas Tech and Baylor. Texas Tech has wins over Oklahoma twice, Texas, and LSU. You've got Mac McClung, who's great for this team. Meanwhile, Baylor has wins over Texas Tech, Kansas, Illinois, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State, and West Virginia. They've got Maceo Teague, Jared Butler, and Davion Mitchell, and this team is looking good right now. They just beat Oklahoma State and West Virginia, and they are looking good, so I'm going to take them beating a number 18 Texas Tech team. Next up, we've got a rivalry game, Michigan and Michigan State, and Michigan State desperately needs this one to try and make the tournament. They just lost to Michigan earlier in the week, and they've got wins over Rutgers, Ohio State, and Illinois. A win here could put them into the tournament. A loss, and they're almost certainly out, barring some heroics in the Big Ten tournament. But due to their loss to Maryland the other day, I'm not sure that they really have it in them to beat that first opponent that will be lower down to even get to the higher ranked opponent, the Michigans, the Iowas, the Illinois, to try and get that marquee win under their belt. So they desperately need this one. Senior night at home. I expect it to be a close game, but I'm going to take a Michigan team to win. And they've got wins over Ohio State, Iowa, Wisconsin twice, Purdue, Maryland twice, and Rutgers. Next up, we've got Florida and Tennessee. Tennessee's got great wins over Missouri, Arkansas, and Colorado. They've got Pons and Bailey, but they are in free fall pretty much. They lost their last 3 of 5, and they lost their last game to Auburn. Florida, meanwhile, has Trey Mann. They've got wins over LSU, West Virginia, and Tennessee. They just lost to Missouri, as I mentioned earlier in the video, but I'm going to have them beating Tennessee here, even on the road. Both of these teams desperately need this game, and the winner will probably propel themselves over the other in terms of seeding talks in the tournament, and I have Florida getting some momentum going into the SEC tournament. Next up, we've got Houston and Memphis. Houston has wins over Texas Tech, Boise State, and SMU twice. They're coming off a couple wins, and then Memphis has a win over St. Mary's and SMU. A win here could put them into the tournament, and same with Michigan State, and a loss, and they're almost certainly out because they're on the bubble right now. Gotta think that a couple bid bandits are going to come out of the woodwork here and steal a couple spots, so Memphis either needs this game or they need to beat Houston in the American Conference Tournament, and there's almost no other way that they can get in. Next up, we've got the first auto bid to be given out, the Hercules Tires Big South Championship Final. Campbell against Winthrop, and I'm going to have Winthrop winning. Neither of these teams have really many wins to speak of, but I will note that Winthrop beat Campbell twice in the regular season, and of course they only have one loss. And they also beat Furman, which is a decent win. And the closest of the 2 games was the first one. Campbell only lost by 1, so this could be a very competitive game, but I'm just going to take the 22-1 team until I see a reason otherwise. And at that point, Campbell will be in the tournament, so we'll see. Thank you for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe and comment your predictions below.